On this episode, we chat with legendary travel writer and man about town Joe Cummings for part 2 of our interview.
So, if you like listening to good stories, well told, about 4 decades in Thailand, you'll love this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Sawadee krap, and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001 to track down the guy who called me names on Facebook, but the only thing I know about him is that his name is Somchai, so I'm still looking.
And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a 1-year teaching contract 20 years ago, fell in love with Thais, loving the music that I love even more than I do. So I never left.
That's not even ironic. That's like legit.
No, it's the truth. It's for real. It's the truth. We want to say a quick thank you to one of our patrons, Daniel, who supports us at the show shout out level. Notice I clearly pronounced that. Stick around after part 2 of our conversation with Joe Cummings to hear why we're starting a GoFundMe to get Daniel a third telephone. We want to give a big thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a whole bunch of cool stuff, including our ad-free regular show a day early, behind-the-scenes photos and videos of our interviews, discounts on swag, which you can find on our website, and various other things that aren't available to regular listeners. But best of all, patrons like Daniel also get an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we riff on current events and random topics. We just finished recording this week's bonus show, and we chatted about Greg's 10-kilometer for real walking loop that he's taken to doing on the weekends, more mask stories, the ongoing issues of if and or when foreigners in Thailand will get vaccinated, and an incredibly weird tangent at the end that led us from moral crusades to pubic hair to Tom Cruise. For real. To become a patron, head to bangkokpodcast.com/support.
That was a fun tangent. I also just realized that if I'm looking for a dude named Somchai, he couldn't have insulted me on Facebook because Facebook didn't exist until like 5 years after I got here.
You're thinking too much.
Must have been on ICQ. Uh-oh. Well, this episode is part 2 of our conversation with travel writing legend and man about town Joe Cummings. We sat down with Joe recently, as well as a bottle of Jack, to discuss a whole whack of things. And in this show, we discuss Thailand's journey to cannabis legalization, how Joe keeps his head from getting too big as one of Thailand's highest-ranking expats, his thoughts on the political unrest in Thailand as well as Myanmar, the state of travel journalism, and that time he turned down an offer from his mysterious friend to come and work for a little organization we call the CIA. So here is part 2 of our conversation with Mr. Joe Cummings.
Well, I'm going to hit another topic du jour.
Mm-hmm.
Cannabis legalization.
Oh, nice one.
Okay.
Yeah, that could be big.
Well, here's my question to you.
Yeah.
We've had a couple guests on the show talking about the reforms that have already happened,
right.
the reforms that are planned.
Yep.
Do you think there will be recreational cannabis in Thailand anytime soon? They've talked about it?
I think so.
So you're a believer. I'm not sure.
I'm not sure
I want
either.
it. I'm a dreamer.
I'm not sure.
But I'm not
sure. But I think so. I think it makes sense.
Recreational.
Yeah. I think it'll come to that in 5 years.
I keep saying, man, make an island, weed island, and sell packages. Dude, people will be lining up for years.
That's a good idea. Just like
come to Thailand.
Restrict to certain zones. Yeah.
Sit on a beach for 2 weeks and smoke weed.
Idea.
Oh my God.
Yeah,
how many people would be?
Yeah.
Well, there's already medical, but only restricted to government clinics. We've been talking about this. So you can't go to a normal Thai hospital and be prescribed medical marijuana still.
Right. But there's a lot of clinics around now. There's a lot more than people think about. A friend of mine as a journalist is following this pretty closely, and it's just, they're everywhere. I saw one in Pitsanaloke. I was in Pitsanaloke
now
several months ago, and there was a cannabis clinic.
Are they? I wonder if it's true cannabis or CBD. Do you think it's medical marijuana?
They're doing both, and that's the other thing. Not getting is supposedly the THC aspect is not legal, and you can't sell buds on it, but all the clinics I know of sell both. They sell CBD oil, THC oil, and a combination.
Oh wow! And so, but these are official government clinics you're talking about.
Yeah, they're licensed. Yeah, they're officially licensed.
Interesting. I mean, that's not recreational, but it's getting there.
We've talked about on the show before about how weed used to be a part of traditional Thai cuisine as well.
That's right. I remember when I first arrived in Thailand, it was very common in certain things. But for example, it always had ganja leaves. You didn't get very high from it, but it tasted good.
Funny. Thailand always. I remember. It might have been in Lonely Planet. I mean, the first book I read on Thailand was Joe's book. About it. But I just remember the phrase "land of contradictions." So I don't know if it comes from you, but somewhere I read like Thailand, the land of contradictions.
I don't think I said that.
And then it was like they were talking about temples, the number of temples, and the number of prostitutes. That was like the example.
That was someone else.
More temples.
I mean, I expressed the same idea, but a different way.
But in a way, this is my problem because I do see Thailand on the one hand as very conservative and traditional, but then very wild and crazy. Like it is a mix.
It's true. That's what's so cool about Thailand, and the way you get respect at as long as you do it well, gang. If you're a really good monk, yeah. If you're a really good playboy, yeah. It's like either one, you get support, funny.
Well, this is my problem with the cannabis is that I just can't. I find it so hard to believe. When I think of Cali or Portland selling weed in a shop, I'm like, I can see that. It's
happening. It's happening.
But
already they're selling it for cuisine, and they say it's only leaves, no bud, but leaves can get you high.
Sure. Yeah, they can.
Yeah. Well, that's the irony, isn't it? Is because the conservatives are the one who want.
Well, some conservatives.
Want to go back to the old ways, which was with weed.
Well, that's where my hope comes from. I'm hoping the fact that we talked about this on the show before, like these Thai nationalists who normally I wouldn't agree with on much. A lot of them are pro-cannabis because they're like, this is our culture.
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, and they have a good point. They blame American culture for stepping on cannabis. And I'm like, that's true.
Absolutely. Yeah.
That's true.
Yeah. And opium too. Opium should still be allowed, I think. And I guess it is for hill tribes, but for personally.
It's a bit of a different beast though, isn't it?
Well, it's more dangerous for sure.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I'm hoping, but also I'll believe it when I see it.
They're talking about, actually, that is in the books, or on the table rather, is legalizing opium for medicinal use. Yeah. Have you not read about this?
I haven't read about that.
It's on there. It's on
I've
the table.
I've read about
Kratom, but Kratom was already made legal again.
What Kitty? So we had a guest on it. I think it's supposed to. It hasn't gone into effect yet. They passed the law. I think they passed the law,
but it hasn't gone into effect.
Yeah, I think it's supposed to go into effect like June or July.
It's such a mild. I don't know if you guys have done
that was the one. That's the one you chew.
Yeah,
right?
and I've done it many times, and it's so mild. It's like it's not addictive. It's like this should be illegal because when they made it illegal in like 1985 or something like that, that was when the yaba, what they call it yama back then. That's the people started taking bad amphetamines instead.
Gotcha.
Truck drivers and dock workers.
And I know I've read this before, but you first arrived in Thailand
77.
When? 77. Wow. Damn. Greg and I joke about how so many people look at us like we're old timers, and then we meet like ex-CIA guys and ex-backpackers like Joe. And I got here.
No, because it's like the Farang card game, right? Like
you're right.
The three questions you ask. Oh yeah, wow, and then it goes up, and then like you get to the old men of the group. How long have you been here? 20 years. When would I say 20 years? And someone's like, holy crap, and then I feel like that's right. I earned that 20 years, man. Like I put my time in. And then when we meet like a true legend like Joe Cummings,
77,
man. You got here when I was 2.
Yeah.
Why is it only backpackers and former CIA operatives that seem to have been here that long?
Because they're the smartest ones. They know the best ways to maintain.
You want to hear my CIA story?
Yeah,
sure,
of course.
Sure.
I've never talked about this. I mean, in a podcast or something, but
hang on, I gotta get
when I finished. So I was here 77 to 79. And when I went back to the States and went to Berkeley, I got a fellowship to Berkeley to do a master's, and they paid for everything: airfare, books, apartment, obviously tuition. And so I was doing, it's called Southeast Civilization, but my areas were, originally it was art history and Buddhism, but then right as it was about getting towards graduation, my academic advisor said, "Oh, dude, you don't have enough credits in Buddhism." I was panicking. I needed 2 areas of concentration. But he says, "You have a shitload of Thai language," because that's what I really loved. So I ended up art history and Thai language. Anyway, so I was 2 months away from graduating, 3 months away from graduating with my master's, and I just gotten funding to do my field studies in my last quarter here in Thailand for my degree, to do Buddha Dasa, to go with Buddha Dasa. You know what that is?
Yeah, sure. Buddha Dasa, sure, yeah.
Died in 93, but this is 1981. And coincidentally, I'd gotten the contract from Lonely Planet to do the first edition of Thailand. I was double dipping in a way.
Big year.
Yeah, wow. It was a big year. Because I wrote this aerogram to Tony Wheeler like 9 months before, and he was like, "Yeah, man, go." So I hadn't left from my field studies. I was just about to leave. And there was a Thai student who I kept running into. He was older. To me, older. He was like in his late 40s, and I was 24, 25.
It's an old man, yeah.
Yeah. And but he was supposedly a physics student there, supposedly. And he would drop into my Thai class. My Thai was too advanced for group classes, so I had one-on-one with a professor. But he would drop in, and this is how I know that Berkeley's department was in on this. My Thai professor one day said, "This is John. He's from Thailand. He's a physics student, and he's an easy foreign language credit. And we let him sit in once in a while. He gets a foreign language credit, and you get to hear another native speaker, and it's better." I said, "Sure,
yeah,
sure,
that sounds great."
And he started, like he had an apartment right out Sather Gate, like the most prime spot. A foreign student getting such a great apartment right next to Sather Gate, and he bought like a stereo Gibson 345 guitar. When he found out that I play guitar, it was like,
oh wow,
way beyond my means. And an expensive Fender amp, and he could barely play. And just so we started hanging out and everything, and me just being so enthusiastic about Thailand, everything Thai person, Thai whatever. So I just I didn't see any of the red flags that this guy was sort of manufacturing a relationship. Anyway, so I'd known him from September of the year before. So this is like March of the following year. He says, "I want to take you out to dinner. I know a really great Thai place. It just opened called Cha'am."
Oh, nice. So
I went, and he said, we started eating, had a little bit of small talk, and he says, "So, Joe, you're going to graduate soon. What are you going to do?" And I said, "What can you do with a degree in Southeast Asian Studies?" And I don't have any idea. It's like, I don't think the prospects are too good.
We're going to teach Southeast Asian Studies.
That's right.
Yeah. I was thinking about going to London to do my PhD at SOAS, actually, but I didn't tell him that night anyway. And then I said, and also I got this contract to do a guidebook for this little guidebook company nobody's ever heard of called Lonely Planet. And so, maybe that'll go somewhere. And he says, "Have you ever thought about joining the CIA?"
No way.
And I said,
straight up recruiter.
Well, I didn't know. Even when he said that, I thought, that's just a joke. I said, "No, John, what?" And then, no, of course not. And he says, "Well, the salary and benefits are really good." I said, "John, what do you know about the salary and benefits of the CIA?" "Well, I work for the CIA. We'd really like to have you on board."
Oh, wow.
Way.
And my whole world had cognitive dissonance. I mean, the room was spinning. I was like, I thought this guy was my friend. What the fuck? And
that is crazy.
And then I was just trying to do everything I could to convince them that I wasn't a good candidate. I was like, I was an anti-war protester. I was leading student strikes in D.C.
Right.
And they said, "We know that, Joe. It shows you have a talent for subterfuge." He used that word.
Oh, dude.
He's like, "We know everything about you, Joe."
Yeah. And then I said, "What?" And then the drugs. I've taken drugs.
Yeah,
I say, "You know what? Once you're with us, you can have all the drugs you want." I swear to God, this is verbatim, man.
Oh, that's great.
And then at that point, I paused for a second and I said, "No, I ain't doing it. It's dangerous. I've seen those movies, The Man Who Knows Too Much, but really, I think it's unethical. I'm not doing it." He said, "Okay." And we just went right back to finishing our dinner. And I went back and I told my wife, my ex-wife now, told her the whole story and everything. And I went back and the next few days, he wasn't on campus. He was in none of my classes, went over to his apartment, knocked on the door, no answer. I peered in, all the furniture was gone, the guitar.
No way.
Oh God, that was it. He spent 9 months
trying to
get me, and then that was it.
Holy moly, that's an awesome story.
Actually, maybe the story is just meant to.
It's a cover story.
That's why I don't tell the story very often.
And maybe he said yes.
Such a great cover.
Tony's downstairs on a, or John, he's downstairs on a motorcycle.
This is why I agreed to be here tonight, because, you know, have you thought about what you're going to do with it?
That is so great.
Man.
You know, that's incredible that they devoted that much time. I mean, who knows? Maybe there were some other students they were looking at, but still, it's amazing that they were that focused.
And I remember, you know, I was like, I didn't give it a second thought. You know, I mean, I thought it was an interesting story. And then years later, I thought, what if I said yes? I mean, not in a way that I regret it, of course not. But I mean, how different my life would be.
Yeah. You could have been an asset.
It might have looked the same. Travel writer for Lonely Planet. It might have looked the same.
You know what would be different? I'd be living in a fucking
that's right.
penthouse.
that would be the difference.
Yeah.
I think it's great that the CIA didn't care about drugs. I think it's like the FBI that cares about that shit. The FBI cares about that shit, but like the CIA, they're like,
exactly.
We're way beyond.
They were the ones that were
that's right.
beefing up the Golden Triangle.
That's right. And the Iran-Contra thing with the cocaine.
Yeah, that's right. That's right.
Right. Back in the days when
Mr.
Nice was running.
Yeah.
That is a great story. That's a great story.
Yeah. That's awesome. So, Joe, we don't want to take up too much of your time here, but let's think about wrapping up.
Yep. Then have a little more.
Yeah, please do. Enjoy. Have you finished that ice?
Yeah, I just finished the ice, finished the bottle.
Yeah. Well, don't finish the bottle. I want to take some home.
I'll just take a tiny bit.
But Thailand is in a bit of a strange situation right now.
Yeah.
There's a lot of protests. They don't seem to be.
Yeah.
They're not. I don't think they have the momentum that previous ones have done, but
I don't think so either.
They're touching on areas that previously have not been touched.
That's true.
So, in your 40 years in and out of Thailand, I mean, what's going on here? What's happening? Why now?
I don't know. Let me ask this.
Yeah.
Do you think it will be any different than the past? Like in the past, you know, Greg and I, we've experienced 2 coups, right? You're a 3-coup guy.
Quite a few.
You're 3, or maybe even more.
Yeah. 1977 was one of my first years.
So I mean, obviously, there's some change that happens with each of these.
81 was another one. Yep.
But not that much change. Not that much. Do you expect this to be any different?
Well, there's 2 ways to look at it. I think the protests that are happening now are like bourgeois. You know, they're so bourgeois, like appointed times, and it's all like mostly students
But they are younger.
It's not like. Yeah, but they had young protesters back in 75, 76, 77, but they were a lot more coordinated, more nonstop, and they just kept coming, and they got workers and farmers too. So you have workers, farmers, and students. It's just students, 90%, maybe not 90%, but a lot.
But you know, I went through this in class, you know, where we were discussing what's the likely outcome.
What did they say?
I think this generation of Thai students, university and high school, they're more politically aware. In 2006 and in 2014, 98% of my students did not care. Did not give a shit. They just didn't give a shit. They were apathetic.
Okay.
And it was kind of depressing for me because I'm like, a coup. Like, oh my God, a coup.
This is big news, man.
You know, my students are like, can we go to Starbucks now? You know, it's like they were not political.
Right.
That was my take.
Yeah.
But now I feel like more, I mean, it's still not most of my students, but just judging by Facebook posts of my students.
But still, it's just students in Bangkok. I mean, the whole rest of the country, I don't know.
But maybe they're the only ones that can change things. I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Maybe. I don't know if there's enough of them. Though, you know,
but like I said, it doesn't have the
maybe it's enough.
The momentum or the velocity or the size of the previous ones. Like these guys are not going to be shutting down Ratchaprasong intersection with bamboo fortifications.
No.
But the things that they're talking about is
well, they're much bolder. They're much bolder in terms of what they say.
Yeah,
for sure.
So they might not have the velocity or the size, but the subject matter is way more volatile.
But that velocity and size didn't work.
No,
you know, it didn't work.
But I don't know if this is going to work either. The thing they're going against is so deeply entrenched.
That's right.
And it goes back to 1932.
Right.
So you know, the military believe that they own democracy here.
That's right. That's exactly right.
So they feel they have the right to correct it and move it this way or that way whenever they feel like it. And I don't know how anyone's going to change that.
Yeah. No one knows. That's the thing, right? Is that people keep trying. You know,
I when I was talking about
the way they could change it is if they can provoke atrocities, and you know that's what they're going to try to do, like they're doing in Myanmar now. And then you get the sympathy of the whole country behind you.
Right.
But Thais don't really like that level of violence. So Thais see a lot of blood. They just recoil immediately. Everything peels back.
I don't think anyone likes atrocities.
Right.
Yeah.
When it gets to that level, like it's yikes.
I'm wondering if my hope, so I had this list of my students of optimistic points and pessimistic points. And, some of my pessimistic points were like what you were saying. It's like, or what you were saying, like the total numbers are less. It doesn't seem as broad based. It doesn't have workers and farmers.
Yeah.
It's not throughout the country. It's just whatever.
Yep.
But my optimism was that, obviously like in the American Civil Rights Movement, they always said like, or one of the sayings, I think it comes from a song, was like, you have to free your mind, and then your ass will follow. It's like from a song, I think.
Okay.
And maybe these young people just talking about this stuff and saying this stuff, I feel like at least mentally they're more free and more open.
That's true.
And I mean, if they're saying this stuff from stages, then clearly in private among their friends, they're saying much more.
And in their companies, when they're working, when they get to that, it's like eventually the powerful families maybe in Thailand will be more democracy oriented.
Yeah, I mean, plus because those young people are going to grow up. I mean, one thing I've learned in Thailand is like change happens slow.
Yeah, especially deeply entrenched beliefs like this. It takes generations to shift.
I mean, this is why I'm not a total believer on cannabis. Like I'm hoping, but it'd be amazingly fast because I don't remember anyone talking about this even 5 years ago. I know there were like whispers of it 5 years ago.
Yeah. That's why we started we do a bonus show for our patrons every week. Yeah. And we have a new segment we called Weed Watch, where there's
we talk about the update, we talk about the updates and stuff.
And I think it's interesting because I think cannabis is sort of a proxy for Thai culture writ large. Yeah. Whereas it's making surprisingly
it's progressive. It's
progressive moves.
Right.
The gay marriage thing is talked about.
The abortion law. They changed the abortion law. They changed the abortion law.
Very
cannabis legalization. So it's like you don't expect that in a traditionally conservative country like Thailand.
Yeah.
And when the 5 families, that really control everything in Thailand, as their younger generations grow into those positions of power, I think you'll see things change. Also,
I hope we're all still here.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I wonder. Yeah, in my lifetime,
we'll be 40-year men. Joe will be a 60-year man in Thailand.
Imagine slamming down that Trump card at a party. How long you been here? Bam, 40 years.
Yeah.
But then there'll always be someone like Joe who'll go 60.
60, yeah, right.
That's right.
And I'll just go, okay, you're either a backpacker or a member of the CIA. Or,
that's right.
Or both. Maybe you could be both.
Yeah.
So, Joe, finishing up, what we do with our patrons, our $5 and above patrons, is we ask them if they want to ask a question of our guests when they're coming on. And we got a question here from our buddy Phil, and this goes back to your first love. This goes back to travel in Thailand, and he says, "Are there still any undiscovered areas here in Thailand that would make for a true adventure?"
That's a good one.
That's a good question.
There are. There'd be surprisingly more than you might think. Even islands, which tend to. Yeah, there's a bunch of islands in the Andaman that nobody really goes to. They're uninhabited, but if you get a kayak or a fisherman to take you there. Or Drang province has 44 islands. That's where I spent my lockdown last year. So I was 2 months on the beach, mainland beach called the Hat Samaran, just fishermen. And
in Drang province.
Drang province, down in the south. And 44 islands in the provincial boundaries. And they're all stunning. And there are ferries going to, maybe not all 44, but maybe at least 15 of them. Really? There's villages on them. So I would say Drang Islands for sure. Renong Islands too, south of Payam. There's all these little islands. You can go camping. If they have, just take a tent or something. So those for sure. And then I've been staying in Prachuap recently. And Prachuap it's not totally undiscovered, but it's just such a nice old school kind of Thai travel destination. Cheap seafood and old buildings still. They haven't torn down all the old shop houses. You
wrote an article about that for Thai 101, right?
I did, for Bangkok 101, yep.
Bangkok 101. Yeah. I'm sorry. Thai 101 is Rickard Dockham's Twitter handle.
Oh, really?
No, there's lots of places.
Good friend and former guest.
There's lots of places left. Lots of places left.
You just have to get out there and find them, I guess.
Got to be adventurous.
Two other Joe Cummings stories I need to say.
Yeah.
I think I owe you some money because I've been using one of your anecdotes for years talking about durian. And I remember reading the original Lonely Planet book when I first got here in 2001. My original Lonely Planet book.
Yeah.
And you described eating durian as like eating your favorite flavor of ice cream while sitting on a toilet.
Yeah, that's right.
I use that all the time, so I owe you like a bot every time I said it. So
that's funny.
Yeah, you got
me. That's right.
And the second one I want to talk about is just let's finish on this. I always say that I think being a journalist now must be really difficult. Being a travel journalist must be really difficult because everyone's got a high def video camera, photo camera. Yeah. They've got a blog. They've got access to unlimited publishing material potential. Right. I remember years ago, you had just come back from doing a research trip to Burma, I think, and you were in a Starbucks on Sukhumvit. And I happened to run into you a few days later, and your bag was on the back of your chair with all your notes in it. And some asshole came by and lifted your bag and took off with it.
Yeah. Oh, for real? Is that? Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so you had to go back and be like, oh my God.
I had a lot of microcassettes that I hadn't transcribed and they got them all.
Oh man.
Oh, yeah. Brutal.
So travel writing now must be a whole different beast.
Yeah, it's better. It's digital now. So you just, that wouldn't happen. It wouldn't matter now.
But your point also.
I have it in the cloud.
But there's also more competition is what you're saying. So kind of anyone can do it now.
Well, there's a lot of free content. But you know what I would say on that is that if you are good and you have style, then you'll still get paid. You'll still get paid. There's not much good free content.
So you welcome the competition.
I mean, the people that are providing free content, the only reason it's free is because no one wants to hire them.
Good point.
One thing I've never been accused of is having too much style. So maybe
you just got to bring a style. That's what they want. I mean, I wish I had. If I was starting out now, I would develop expertise in videography and editing and all that. It is the way.
Yeah.
But there's still a demand for well-written content.
Nice.
I wish there were more demand, but I mean, CNN has been very good to me over the last year.
Excellent.
Yeah. So as we wrap up, where can people find you? You're still gigging around town with your band?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, playing. When is this coming out?
This will come out probably beginning of May.
Oh, okay. Yeah. I don't know any gigs in May yet.
All right.
Yeah, I got a couple of gigs coming up next 2 weeks.
But where are you playing in the next 2 weeks? Where are you playing?
15th at Smalls. Smalls?
Oh, sure.
Very cool bar.
Yeah.
My Rolling Stones band. Yeah. It's a Rolling Stones tribute. No, tribute would be too much. Just say cover band. Yeah.
Cover band. What's it called?
It's called Midnight Ramblers.
Midnight Ramblers.
We can go for 3 hours nonstop.
Nice.
Our catalog is pretty broad now.
Nice.
Awesome. And online, joecummings.com?
Yeah. It's really out of date, though. Better to follow me on Twitter or Instagram.
Twitter's good.
And they're both the same, Joe J. Cummings, at Joe J. Cummings on Twitter or Instagram.
And you know what? Head to Kinokuniya, Asia Books, any bookstore. There's a Joe Cummings section.
Yeah. That's right. There's a whole wall. There's a wall of Joe Cummings stuff.
Yeah. Highly recommended. Can't go wrong. Joe, thanks so much, man. It's always a pleasure to sit down with you. 10 years is too long.
Yeah.
But good to have you back on the show.
We got to make him a once a year guy on the podcast. That's going to be our annual Joe Cummings show. We got to do it.
Bottle of Jack Daniels once a year. I can
for sure.
Thanks, man.
Take it easy. I'll give you the other two recruitment stories I got.
Sweet.
Oh, wow.
I had two more.
That's great. Thanks a lot, Joe.
All right.
Take care.
Yep.
Cheers.
Yeah, baby. Come on. You did all right.
Boom.
Was this a good idea? It's a good idea.
It's always a good idea.
Yeah, great idea.
Yeah.
Classic, man. Okay, this is why we have to do a Joe show every year. I insist.
Yeah, it's kind of not up to you though, but I'm on board. It's up to Joe, but I'm all up for an annual Joe show.
The bottom line is he's been doing this kind of stuff forever, and he's still making new stories. Like, you remember we started out part 1 talking about the new movie he was working on, like right now.
Right. Yeah, I know. He's the guy that like he's as Thai say, which drives me crazy. He walks the talk. It's not walks the talk. It's walks the walk, talks the talk. Anyway, he does it because like I've got a little.
That's so funny.
Like people have tattoos on their bodies that say like "live life, no fear" or something like that, and then inevitably most people end up, raising a family and going to a 9-to-5 job, which is great. It's fine, nothing wrong with that. But Joe is out there, man. He's still out there.
He really is, yeah.
Adventuring.
That's right. Yeah. In that interview, I think I remember from part 1 where he was talking about his academic degrees, and that's just the kind of stuff that, like, I think I had read about that before. But if you just kind of knew Joe from the Lonely Planet and maybe around Bangkok, he's kind of like a hippie, he's an aging hippie dude. You would be shocked to be like, wait a minute, you have 2 master's degrees?
Yeah, totally.
So he's really just the classic interesting expat.
Very interesting, all around cool guy and a very, very nice person. Very laid back and always a pleasure to talk to. So many, many thanks for coming on the show, Joe. And hey, man, if you're up for it, Joe, we're up for it. An annual Joe show.
In 1 year.
I think it's a good idea. Yeah. All right, let's get into some love, loathe, or live with, where one of us picks a particular aspect of living in Bangkok, which we then discuss and decide if it's something we love about living here, loathe about living here, or have come to accept as something that we just have to learn to live with no matter how we feel about it. And last time, Ed's topic was electronic banking. So this week, it's my turn.
Hit me.
You've traveled throughout the kingdom in your days and years here?
Yeah, a fair amount. I wish more, but yeah, a fair amount.
All right. So you've stayed in hotels, I'm assuming. So what are your thoughts about when you climb into the bed at your hotel and you slide your feet down to the bottom and there's that titanium ribbon of sheets tucked in so tight that you could put your feet under it and probably stand straight up in bed. You try to kick it out and it won't budge. Are you a fan of this thing, or do you sort of can't sleep with it?
Well, this is old school because there's no one who could love this. But so there's many issues going on here. Like I thought you were going to go in one direction, but you went in another. But to me, this is just a kind of height issue. So I'm a little bit taller, so I'm 6 feet tall. I don't know what that is in the M thing, whatever the M stands for. I don't know.
You're so American.
But yeah, so there's sometimes I get, it depends on where I'm at, and the type of, sometimes I get into a bed and I'm just, my heels are just over the bottom. And then of course, if they have the crazy tight sheets, like what you're talking about, like it's just a tight thing to have like crazy sheets. Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah. I'm a solid loathe on this one, but I have a friend who loves it. They tuck their feet under it and it makes them feel safe and like.
No, I don't like it.
Secure.
Okay, I'm wasting another love, loathe, or live with, but to me this is a related thing, and you must. I'm just going to talk about this now because I don't want to wait for another love, loathe, or live with. But one thing that drives me crazy is a lot of Thai beds. There's like a thick, like it's basically like a comforter.
Okay.
There's no in between. So it's for some reason like a thin, moderate blanket is not a Thai thing. Where I grew up, it's like there's the fitted sheet, but then there's like I would call it a bed sheet, and then there's a blanket, and then maybe there's a comforter, and then there's maybe a comforter. But in Thailand, it's like they go straight to the comforter. I'm telling you,
this is a Seinfeld episode.
I'm telling you, man. They go straight for the comforter.
This is, Jerry gets into bed and his girlfriend likes the tight thing on the bottom on, and he likes it off, and that's why he has to break up with her. Okay, well, let's get back to my thing. I'm a loathe on this one. The thing around the bottom of the bed that I have to, like, sometimes I literally have to stand up, get out of bed, and rip it up with my arms, and it's not easy.
Yeah, you're right. It's almost like wrapping paper, or it's like they've tightened. It's like, I don't know. It's like maybe it's bizarre. It's like they want to show you that the bed is fresh or clean or something. You know what I mean?
It's a power move by the maids. Like, hey, if we want to, you're never leaving this bed. We're going to tie you down. You're not getting up.
Yeah. Well, I'm a loathe. I'm with you, man.
All right. I'm a loathe too. You put a lot of thought into it.
So as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we'd like to say thank you to Daniel for lending us his support at the show shout out level. And Greg, what did you find out about Daniel?
No one's going to let me live that down for months. Be the show shout out level. All right, well, as it turns out, we talk a lot, Ed, about which expat has been here the longest, like Mr. Joe Cummings is Thailand's most highest ranking expat. But we don't usually talk about which expat got here at the youngest. And I think Daniel takes the cake on that one. I exchanged a couple of messages with him, and he says, not sure what you can talk about. I was 6 months old the first time I was in Thailand. So I'd say he was probably here the youngest of anyone I've ever met.
I think so.
6 months old. He said,
who's not Thai, you mean?
Well, right. yeah, that's what I mean. Like he was a 6 month old expat. Right?
That's great.
Not like he had a choice in the matter, but he said he came here every year with his family, and he started coming here by himself when he was only 17. That's interesting. Crazy times. He said, I always feel more at home in Thailand than anywhere else for some reason. So clearly it was bred into his DNA when he was younger.
Sure. For sure.
Yeah. Now I'm 27 years old with a Thai girlfriend, a house in Hua Hin, and starting to plan for my long-term stay in Thailand with some new business ventures. So Daniel sounds like he's on the ball. And check this out. He says, Bangkok Podcast has really helped me in recent years, both in good times and bad times. I have a few businesses in Sweden where I'm working alone. I have a special phone just for podcasts, and the Bangkok Podcast is number one. I always listen. Wow. Yeah, I always listen, and somehow it really helps me focus on what I'm doing. So I just want to say thank you for putting on great content that is easy to listen to. So he's got a special podcast phone, and I'm thinking being who we are, maybe we should start like a GoFundMe campaign to buy Daniel a special phone just for our podcast.
That's a great idea. I like it. Like a third phone, a Bangkok Podcast phone.
Maybe that's the shadow level. The show shadow level is like after a year of payments, you get a Bangkok Podcast branded telephone just to listen to the podcast on.
That's great. That's
good. So Daniel, you have multiple phones, but I think it's time for you to get a Bangkok Podcast exclusive one. We'll look into that. Maybe we can buy you a cheap old Nokia at MBK or something. We could put a little card in or something like that. But thanks for the support, man. We hope you're doing well down there in Hua Hin. And when we have our next meetup, whenever the hell that is, hopefully you can make the trip up and come and hang out with us. And
in 2037.
Yeah. Take some pictures on your third phone. So thanks, man.
Thank you. All right, a final thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a ton of cool perks and the warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that they're helping support the show. Find out more by clicking support on our website. And connect with us online. We're Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners and always reply to our messages.
Yeah, we do. You can also listen to each episode on YouTube. You can send us a voicemail online that we'll probably feature on the show, or even reach out to me directly on Twitter or Insta, where I am BKK Greg. So thank you for listening, everyone. Stay safe, wear your masks, and we'll see you back here next week.
For sure. So, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we'd like to say thank you to Daniel for lending us his support at the show.
What?
I was just thinking of going off on all these tangents. It's like I think if you I just feel like I'm going off on tangents, but
there's a lot of tangents going on, but they're fun.
Okay, that's where I'm at. Okay. So, as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we'd like to say thank you to Daniel for lending us his support at the show shout-out level. And Greg, what did you find out about?
You guys aren't going to let me live that down, eh? It's shout-out, not shout-out, shadow level.
And Greg, what... And Greg,
okay,
what did...
You
got to let me say it. You got to say it, dude.
You got to say the whole sentence again, then.